the responsibility is on me. It's in nobody else.
Because there are some men who have issues overstated. They may be too sick to be part of a group at this point in their lives.
Wow, yeah.
Because what we're talking about here, we're talking about volunteer Christian men working with other men, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Men have certain life skills and they can be helpful. Mm-hmm. We're not psychiatrists. We're not psychologists. There's some people who have problems that need to be with professional people, and to work that out. And they may not be really in a position that they can.
Yeah, they may not be ready.
They may not be ready at this point in their life.
This is the Men Refined podcast.
Hey friends, welcome to the Men Refined podcast. Today I have my good friend with me, Michael Heintzman. Michael, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure to have you. And Michael has been involved with men's discipleship programs for many years, and I really wanted to have you here in the pod just to talk a little bit about discipleship within men, especially in these days now. It's we went through this a couple of years ago. We went to this something that nobody knew what was going on, and I believe that was a challenge, and I think we learned a lot during 2020, how to connect with other men, how to be more creative, how to create spaces so people can connect at a deeper level. What did we learn?
Maybe before I go into that, just a little bit about myself. Maybe that would be helpful for the listeners. As I am Michael Heintzman, I'm married. I'm retired at this point.
Wait, you say I'm retired?
Right.
Do you feel yourself as a retired man?
Well, no. I guess I say I don't have a full-time employed job, but I do some part-time work. And as a believer, I don't believe you ever retire from being a Christian.
Amen to that, sir.
You're called to duty up until the Lord calls us home, and so we do what we can. So I'm not fully working for financial gain at this point, but I have a lot of things I'm doing. I should mention I'm 76 years of age. I want to talk about that a little bit in regard to discipleship in men during this discussion. Married, I have 2 children, 4 grandchildren. Son in Portland, and been married 54 years. It's been a wonderful run. Wife and I have really. It's been iron sharpens iron kind of thing. We've really grown, and each of us is a different person today because of what the other has poured into our lives. So that's been a great experience. The other thing that I've done a great deal of in terms of my Christian walk, I became a Christian at the age of 19 through what I'll call a Young Life type ministry. For the listeners who know what Young Life is, it's a kind of a high energy youth kind of a ministry, and I became a believer through them. And
what was that called? Do you remember?
I'm sorry, what was it?
What was the ministry called?
Oh, it was North Hills Youth Ministry. It was back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but they modeled themselves after the Young Life model, basically is what it was. And so I've been a believer since then. A lot of changes along the way in terms of my theology and things I learned. Yeah. And then and it was with through some men's discipleship programs and men's discipleship involvements that I really came to maturity in terms of understanding what it meant to be a mature believer. As Paul says, not that I have obtained it, but that I have had a sense of what men are called to. And I'm using the word men because this is a men's broadcast, and I'm not trying to exclude women, and in any of struggles and issues that they have along the way. But we want to focus today on the issue of men, their maturity, their discipleship. So that's where we're going to focus on that today.
Definitely. And I will say, just for the listeners, we have 50% of our listeners are actually women.
Okay.
So thank you for that, ladies. We know you're listening.
Right.
And I think is great because we learn from each other, right? It's fantastic to know the insights of the other party, per se.
Right.
That's how we learn.
Sure. Yeah, and my wife has been my biggest supporter, but also my biggest challenger at times. One of the people who spoke truth to me along the way, and so that's a real part of a man's walk, I think, to have women in his life who he has healthy relationships with and who speak truth to him as well. That's part of the walk of a man as well. So when we talk about men, we're not talking about just men going to go out and into the hut by themselves and with each other away from the women folk. That's not what we're talking about here at all. We're talking about becoming mature members of the community and with healthy relationships between men and women. That's part of what Christian maturity is.
There's a lot of isolation in men, also in women. We can say there's been a huge isolation growth in the last 10, 15 years, give it or take, especially new generation. We've seen issues coming out of isolation. We went through 2020, which was a very tough year for many, and part of 2021 because of isolation. And we have also seen a growth on people trying to connect with each other, trying to get in community, trying to be part of something else besides yourself.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about what do you think about men's discipleship? Why is something like that important? Being around other men who can hold you accountable seems a bit contradictory of what society can tell oneself. You are your own. Nobody can tell you what to do. You do what you want, when you want, how you want it.
Yeah, a lot in that. I think the core of that, in terms of why should men be in groups with other men, is because I think there's some unique challenges that men have, and I think sometimes the kinds of candid conversations that are necessary for men to have can only take place if they're in a safe space with other men where they can be vulnerable, raise the issues of their life, and then have men react to that. Because sometimes you can say something and you can have your ideas could be totally twisted, and somebody could say, "Wait a minute, that is absolutely nonsense." Mm-hmm. Sometimes just having somebody tell you that what you just said is nonsense is important, but to have a place where all those that you can talk about yourself, about what's really going on in your life, in a place where you can trust the men that are listening to you, and that they mean they have your best interest at heart in your maturity, your emotional health, your physical health. They're concerned about you, your family, that kind of thing. I think those kinds of things, men grow if they're around other men. I think, as you just mentioned, we have a certain, maybe a Lone Ranger kind of culture right now. A lot of men don't have close personal friends. They might have maybe one or two at most. Some men, if they have 3 or 4 actually close friends, they're an unusual person.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, a question every man should ask himself is just to get a piece of pencil and paper and write down who in my life could I actually tell an important thing to? Who would I trust with an important issue in my life, and see how big the list gets. For most men, that's pretty small. So one of the things that I do have been involved with are ministries that encourage men to meet with each other, learn what it is to have a what community is. A lot of men don't know what community is. See, a lot of men, if you look at the statistic, you'll see that almost half the children grow up with only one parent.
Yeah.
And the parent that's usually missing is the man. And so a lot of boys have not really been introduced to manhood by their own fathers, or that introduction has been sketchy at best. So you have a lot of young men coming to maturity or coming to manhood. I don't want to say maturity, who really haven't had examples, haven't had the kind of mentoring that's important for young men. So you have a lot of men a little bit directionless in terms of this. Like, what am I supposed to feel as a man? What do that kind of thing. The important thing is to get guys together and begin to talk about all that kind of thing, and so that as I say, that can only happen. I think there has to be some safe space for men to do that, and in that, you create a platform for what I'm going to call generally discipleship, meaning growth, because as Christians, like I became a Christian when I was 19. But I was certainly not anywhere close to maturity. I became a Christian. The first thing you have to ask when you become a Christian is, what does that even mean? So it's a process that you go through. And so unless you have people who can walk with you through that process, you're going to be blown here and there, because you hear one good, oh, that's a good idea, or is it? You think it's a good idea, and maybe it's not. You need people around you. So anyway, that's a long-winded answer, but I think that I call men's groups and discipleship group in the sense of we're Christian people, so we have in the Bible an outline of how we are supposed to develop, mature, the things that are supposed to be important to us, that kind of thing. But that's where I think the greatest growth is when you're in a Christian, with a group of Christian men who are trying to explore the Christian issues.
In your experience, when do you figure that out? When do you realize that I have to put myself around other men?
Right.
Because for me, it took a while.
Right.
As a young man, I didn't grow up in the faith, but that took me a while, even through my adulthood, understanding that I have to have people around me. I have to find the best guys around me and be where they are. Put myself in that position. Ask. Knock. The Bible says that it is not good for men to be alone. So there's a clear expectation for us to live in community, to live in relationships. And it takes a while for somebody to understand that.
Yes. And to answer your question, I don't know that there's a one answer for every person, in the sense of when you get to be 30, that's what the light switch goes off, and I suddenly now I know I need to be with other men.
When did it happen for you?
Yeah, I think that's I can talk a little bit about my own experience. Because I was, for a major part of my life, up to about the age of 50, I would say I was a Lone Ranger Christian kind of guy. I had some connections with people. But
wait, you said until the age of 50?
50, yeah.
And you are now?
76.
Wow.
So, and just to put that in context, I mean, I wouldn't say I was totally
isolated
or living, I was involved with the career, doing things, that kind of stuff. But in terms of being in and I did have one or two what I would call good relationships with men, but I did not see that as a high value because of other things that were going on. And what happened when I was 50, the train wreck in regard to my health, with heart problems. And then I did have a guy in my life who did come to me at that point and say to me, when he saw me right after I had these issues, he said, well, why did you do this to yourself? And that was his first thing. He didn't let me feel sorry for myself or feel pity, blame other people, all the kinds of things you can do if you have a train wreck. And he said, and so he challenged me in that regard. And so one of the things I do, I had started to do, I do my own spiritual retreats. I'll go away for 2 or 3 days in the woods and do things. And and so based upon that, I just journal. I journal a lot now. Every day I write a little bit. But anyway, I just write down what do I need to do at this point in my life, and to get control of this, and what are the problems? And one of the things I wrote down, I remember, was I did not have good conversations. That was one of the things I wrote down. I don't have good conversations. That I'll talk about to people about sports or things like that. So one of the things I prayed for at that time is I needed to develop a way to have better conversations. And what that led to was a man asked me shortly thereafter to be a part of a men's discipleship group. Mm-hmm. And I did that. And it was through that I developed a circle of men who stood with me through a lot of things. But the important thing was I didn't realize the power of it until I saw the toxic effect of being alone, of how that can lead to some train wrecks in your lives. Mm-hmm. For some men, it ends up they have an affair, or they have some kind of midlife crisis. For me, it was a health crisis. Mm-hmm. Other men have other kinds of things, but you can do things for a long period of time in your life. You can either handle it or get away with it. You think you can handle alcohol or whatever it is you're doing, and then suddenly you have that moment. So for some men, it's a dramatic thing. For other men, it's a matter of realizing somewhere along the way, I need friends, or I need somebody I can talk to. And unfortunately, some men don't get that. So, but it's a thing that I've been involved with in various ministries, trying to help create situations for men to have that relationship, or develop relationships such that they can be in real conversations.
I've noticed that most of the time, men just don't want to realize that they need to be around other men, to have healthy relationships with other men.
Right.
And we also have that sane notion. Sometimes you may ask somebody, hey, you want to join this men's group or whatever, and you hear, many times you hear them saying, well, I'm already part of another group with my wife and other couples. Like, I don't have time to be meeting just men. I just don't have the time, right?
Right.
And I wonder, what does that really mean? I could be ones and zeros a lot at many times in my life, because you have to realize that it's healthy for you to have your own space where, as you said, you can speak differently with other men. Because reality is that you will say things to a man that you will not say to your wife. You will say things to a man that, if you're in a close relationship, that you will not say in a group where there's 5-6 couples. That's just reality. You will certainly will not go that route.
Right.
And I think men sometimes we missed self-awareness. We lack self-awareness. Understanding what we need, where we are. I'm coming to the conclusion that we are lacking self-awareness because we don't want to deal with the drama that is in our own head. We don't want to deal with it. Many of us as men, even when we have a conversation with our wives or a peer, we're just like, oh, don't worry about it. I forgot about it. I don't want to deal with it. Forget about it. It's in the past. Let's turn the page and keep going, right? There's really no real resolution in certain aspects in our lives because we lack the motivation to deal with our own drama. Men are trying to be very simple at times, and that can get us in a lot of trouble. And what I'm saying is not, as a man, vomit your life out in front of another man. That's not exactly what I'm saying, but there's a phase there are phases in our lives where I will say there are seasons, for lack of a better word. There are seasons in our lives where it is healthy to speak to another man or to a group of men and open up with certain things that are going through your mind, that you're experiencing in life, because there's a learning process that happens when you do that. First, you become vulnerable with other men. That will trigger other men to also share their own experiences. And at the same time, something beautiful happens. We are all pouring into each other's lives. We are all giving advice in certain seasons, right? A man like yourself can advise me in things of my life. I can advise a younger man, right? But it's very hard if you don't put yourself into those places. So it takes a while. I think it takes the right person also to encourage somebody else to be part of a group like that, because it's healthy. So sometimes we need to become ambassadors of our own necessity, encouraging somebody like, man, just show up. Like, just show up. And I think that's an integral part of our journey as we love each other and we encourage each other and we sharpen each other in life. Because I don't think we realize that until it's too late.
Yeah, that can happen. Exactly. Yeah. Just a couple. You made some great points there. A couple just wanted to follow up on a little bit. First of all, I want to make clear that I know there's groups with couples. Those are great groups. So I don't want anything I say here to imply that I don't think those are a good idea. They can be a wonderful experience for a couple and for a community. And I know a lot of churches really rely upon home groups, which are couples and sometimes single people in those groups too. Yeah. And those are great things. So so I always I want to encourage that. The kinds of topics, for example, though, that men need to be, I think, with other men. For example, if you look at the statistics about the use of pornography in our society, tremendous percentage of men use pornography in a couple situation with husbands and wives. Men are not going to talk about their pornography problem. I think it's a subject. It can be difficult for men to talk about that with other men, but I don't think that conversation is going to take place in a mixed group.
What do you think that is?
Well, because just the dynamics. I mean, if a man's there with his wife in front of other men and their wives, he's not going to want to embarrass his wife by telling a group of people, oh yeah, I use pornography on a regular basis. I mean, you can see the embarrassment that would be to his wife to have to listen to that kind of conversation. And so there are things like that are not going to come out in a home group situation, but where a man either one-on-one in a mentor relationship may be able to talk about that, or with other men, that kind of thing. So there is that. I think one of the important things about having a Christian-based group is that I think there has to be some content to it as well. I think you made the comment, you just don't want to come in and vomit all your problems all the time. The group is not what I call the core issue is not therapy. It's not we're all going to share our feelings.
It's not a therapy session group, right?
Right. And so every week we get there to do that. That's why.
What if it gets like that?
Well, then,
what if there's days that you got 3-4 guys in a group, let's say. Yeah. I'm just going to give an example because I'm sure that many of us have been in these situations at times. So I want to get your take on this, because these takes are important. As a leader, you need to be able to understand where the group is at any given point during that quote-unquote session or time, right?
Right.
So we can guide the group in a direction that it needs to go, but at the same time be mindful and graceful if somebody's going through a hard season in their lives.
Right.
So what do you do in that case when you have somebody who is just taking over the group because all his personal problems, and he's just going on and on and on and on. You don't want to put yourself in a position of telling that person, one, hey, you need to step back and just stop talking about your stuff, right? Because that person may become, he may have come to this group expecting to be a safe place for him to open himself up. And two, I think that there should be a good way to handle situations like this, on which the group can rally around this person and his problems for a season, but at the same time, stay committed to the process and trust the process. And everybody should be aware of that. What's your take on that? What are some challenging situations that we can get around?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you raised a couple of things. First of all, if in terms of the not becoming a therapy group for the group as a whole, basically that's why the content is important. That doesn't mean that at some meetings you may just talk about personal issues. For example, there's some groups that I'm in. One of the things we'll do is, now it has content, you do through the content and you talk about also issues, but sometimes we start a meeting and say, how's everybody doing? Let's just go around the table. How are you right now? What's going on in your life? Are you feeling good about things, bad about things? You need prayer? And those usually in the meetings we have are usually about an hour, and they're set up for either an hour and a half or 2 hours. And that'll take the whole time to have 10 or 12 guys check in.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not, and that doesn't mean now that, okay, for the next 6 months, every meeting is going to be, let's go around the table. But that's also a place where you can get to what are the authenticity, what are the real candidate, what's really going on here? Are we missing anything? That kind of thing. So sometimes you do need to check in with everybody. How are you doing is really a great question. And if you want to have a great conversation with your wife sometime, just say to her, how are you doing? And then sit and listen to what she has to say about it. But it's a powerful question. But so one thing is, even in really good groups, where you're doing both content and accountability and sharing your sins and all that, it's worthwhile to do that. Now, as to the problem you were raising there, yeah, you will sometimes get a person who is so needy that they can take over the group. And then I think what the leader has, it's a leadership issue. What the leader has to do, I think, is meet with that person privately and say, we want to support you, and we want you to stay with us. We're going to stay with you, but every meeting can't become about you. I'm being more blunt than maybe you would be with him, that person. Mm-hmm. But I think from a leadership standpoint, you have to make sure that somebody doesn't sort of hijack the group to meet their own personal needs every week. Mm-hmm. But you also have to communicate to that person, but we're not going to leave you alone in this. I don't want you to think that we don't want to hear you or care about you. We're going to continue to pray about you. I want you to keep coming, but you need to, we need to have some guardrails around this about your own discussion in the group. And that's healthy for the group too, because here's what happens. If somebody takes over the group like that, then the other guys kind of get a pass. Because they don't. If you're really looking for guys to be authentic about what's going on, if the group becomes all we're going to do in this group is fix Bob for the next 6 months. Mm-hmm. Well, then that means the guy doesn't have to talk what's going on in his marriage, with his kids, with his job, whatever the issues of his life are.
And sometimes that's the intention that many men come into being a part of a group.
Right.
They want a space where they can just tell their lives, right? And trying to figure things out. What do you think about expectations? I strongly try to address expectations quite often in some of my groups, constantly. Repetition. Make sure that the group understand this is the time that we're planning to end the group today, in a day-by-day basis. We're ending here. We're going to start wrapping it up by this time. We want to honor each other's times. We want to start on time. We want to devote this amount of time to this conversation so we can keep moving. What happens here stays here, kind of a deal. So expectations, I think, group, telling everybody in the group at the same time the expectations. Will that not be a first step before you have to pull somebody aside? Because if the expectations are very well presented, they should not be a reason for you to pull somebody aside and say, dude, you're taking over the group.
Yes, to answer your question, yeah, I think when you're putting a group together, you want to put together what I call those some of them are administrative kind of guardrails, time, place, expectations, you be here, that kind of thing. I think there's some other guardrails that are important, like we haven't talked about this yet, but confidentiality.
Absolutely.
One of the highest values of any group, that
100%.
kind of, and create those guidelines as well and expectations. And the other thing is, from a leadership standpoint, to the extent that I can, I like to talk to guys before we start the group one-on-one. Sometimes it doesn't always happen, but I also want to get a sense.
You mean before start a group, like before the group starts from scratch, or every time you meet you actually?
Oh no, before it starts from scratch.
Okay, got you.
And because of the situation is because
I like to do that too. I like to get one-on-ones because it's about protecting the group.
Yeah, and
right. Especially when somebody wants to join a group, I'm all about protecting what is already going on and bringing somebody into the picture, into any group, and be that a catalyst for a disaster. The responsibility is on me. It's in nobody else.
Yeah, because there are some men who have issues overstated. They may be too sick to be part of a group at this point.
I understand.
In their lives.
Wow, yeah.
Because what we're talking about here, we're talking about volunteer Christian men working with other men, that kind of thing. Men have certain life skills, and they can be helpful. We're not psychiatrists. We're not psychologists. There's some people who have problems that need to be with professional people, and to work that out. And they may not be really in position that they can.
Yeah, they may not be ready.
They may not be ready
at
this point in their life, and that's why I do like to. One of the reasons I like to talk to men ahead of time, make sure that these are men who are healthy enough to be part of something like this and be contributors as well, and then also, as you were saying, create the expectations, the guardrails for the group, so that men will know when they come what's expected of them. That kind of, in terms of attendance, commitment, confidentiality, all these kinds of things that are so important to make a group work well over time. That they come with that understanding of that, and you're not 6 weeks in and then try to tell people, look, you need to be here on time or something. That you don't want to do that.
Yeah,
you want to build that early.
Yeah. What do you think are common challenges that men's discipleship groups face nowadays?
One of the big things is time. Most of the groups that I'm involved with now, we meet early in the morning, 6 o'clock, and the reason is there's less what do I say?
Friction, disruption for their own families?
Yeah, or conflicts. That was the word. Conflicts with everything else that's going on, particularly with younger men. If you with younger men who have school age children, and a lot of families are two income families. Yeah. So you have the whole child care issue, all these everything going on. Sports programs, all that kind of thing. So, let alone the jobs, everything that they have to do. So, to find time to meet, we find mornings are better. There are less conflicts, although there's still some, because sometimes the younger guys getting the kids to school in the morning is a big issue with if the husband and wife are both working, and kids there's a lot going on between 6 and 7:30 in the morning in a lot of households. So time is a big thing, and then secondly is back to what I call this Lone Ranger syndrome. That's out there.
I like that. Yeah.
Because there's even kind of a mystique about it. You know, Clint Eastwood, I can do it alone. I can handle this.
He's still making movies about that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I am my own man. And,
Yeah.
that's Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, it's not going to go away. I love Clint Eastwood.
Me too. Yeah.
But Clint, you need a buddy.
It's not for everyone, I will say.
Yeah. So anyway, so you have that, and then and I think a lot of men have not had this modeled in their lives. And some may have had a bad experience along the way with that. So because there's things out there, sometimes they don't work. So they may have had a bad experience. So there's a lot of, and I think we have to just look at the culture that we're living in a culture that maybe that really is not at this point kind to Christian values and the kind of things that and the development of Christian men. In fact, the culture they think there's almost a tendency to think that when Christian men get together, that's a dangerous thing as opposed to a good thing. Now, that may be something we as Christians, maybe we have not explained ourselves as well as we could have, and sometimes maybe we've made some mistakes, but I think that and so that there may be some suspicion about us because of that. I think we need to work against that as well. But so there's a lot of factors out there that could make a man say, well, that's good. I don't need it now, or I don't have the time for it now. Maybe check in with me another 10 years.
Have you been there?
Been where?
In those places?
Well, I mentioned my own story. Right. That
you started becoming serious about 850, right?
Yeah, that's when, and that was because, as I said, out of a personal train wreck. So it wasn't like I read a book and said, well, this might be a pretty good idea. So you had asked me this earlier, and sometimes people along the way. So some young men in college, they have a tremendous experience with some campus ministries, and they learn the value, and they develop friendships. Right. And for some of those young men, they
weren't exposed to that.
They go through life, and these are their friends through life. And
it's like you don't know what you're missing until you're actually in it. Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, when we talk about some of the challenges, you mentioned that younger families, right, younger men with younger kids. I have a lot to say about that, because I was once a younger man.
Right.
I was once on a younger family situation season. I was once with 3 little kids at home. And we were church planting, and we were part of community groups, and we were part of men's groups. My wife was part of women's groups, and the whole ordeal. We went through that.
Right.
And we made it. We did not kill each other.
Okay.
Our kids are stable kids.
Okay.
They're sane. They're not crazy kids. And I think
that's 3 good things. You didn't kill each other. You got through it. You're still married. And
what is the problem with this younger generation? That because they have 1 or 2 younger kids, and I want to be gracious here, but hear me also if you're listening and you're in that position. It's all about choices. You as a man have a choice to make.
Right.
And whatever choice you made, you're gonna reap the consequences later in life. So do you even start early, or you want to wait until your years go by and then realize that you should have started earlier. Because now you become an example for your family when you start doing things early in life, okay? And we all make mistakes, right? We can't change the past. I get that. But I've been in the other side. I've been a younger man once. I'm not saying that I'm older. I'm only 46, please. But I had once, my wife and I had once little kids. And we did the whole church business. And we were part of groups and we were extremely involved. Our lives was that. And our kids grew up and we still had extracurricular activities. We still got my son got into basketball, extracurricular, high school, all that stuff. Competition, dance competition for my girls at a professional level. We did all that stuff. So it's all about what do you put in your calendar. Wednesdays for us, Wednesday nights for us was sacred. Nobody will touch Wednesday nights. That was our day where we meet our group in somebody's home. Bunch of families together. Yeah. We did this. Yeah. So it is possible.
Yeah. Were you in a men's group at that time?
I was not.
Okay.
But I was being discipled by one of my pastors.
Okay, so you were a one-to-one kind of a deal.
Yes, one-to-one kind of a thing. But we were part of a nice community group. That's really where we growed, right? It is possible, man.
Oh yeah, yes, it's possible to get through. No doubt about it. I mean, I would say about your situation.
Well, I say it is possible to be part of something with somebody else without the excuses of the family.
Yeah, but
if you really want to.
If you really want to, but if somebody had come to you at that time and said, we're going to get 10 guys, we're going to meet together once a week, 2 hours, would your thought have been, I'm not so sure. Yeah.
Maybe because it's 2 hours, Michael?
Yeah. If you say it's a 1 hour, maybe 1 hour once a week. All I'm saying is...
because you were talking about time, right?
Yeah.
And we all constrain with time.
Right.
That's reality. I get that. Right. So maybe 2 hours is too much. And I'm just saying, depends of what kind of thing you're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with your basic thesis. Okay, everybody's got a lot going on, and so you have to make some decision about what is the priority thing.
Yeah. Are you managing your schedule, or your schedule is managing you?
Right. Yeah. And you have to deal with all that.
Come on, we're all men here. Let's speak clearly here, because we can get things happen at work. We'll move every sea, earth, anything, so our schedules adapt to our work schedule, right?
Okay,
we do that, right?
Yeah, we do. I don't think you and I are really disagreeing. The point I'm trying to make is
I'm trying to disagree with you. Just let me, okay?
Go if you want to. but to get 10 guys who have kids at home, all the things that are going on in their lives, to commit to 2 hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, that kind of thing. Could they do it? Yes, they could do it. No doubt about it. And you're right. If something happens, okay, I got to work 50 hours. Do I have to work 60 hours? Do I have a season? I have to work 80 hours? You do it.
They'll do it.
They'll do it. Right. But right now, where our culture is, this is not a high priority. Mm-hmm. I obviously think it should be a high priority, because I don't want young guys to get through it, and at age of 50 say, wait, what happened to you? What happened to my marriage? What happened to my kids? Why are my kids drug addicts?
For sure. Yeah.
So that's why anytime I get a chance, I urge, in this discussion, urge men to get into these groups, because I think it's the best way for them to take on the culture, and for them to have their own maturity, the best relationships, their best marriages, their best families, all that kind of thing. But you had asked me, why don't they do it? And I was just trying to give you an answer to that.
How do we help the situation, Michael? What can we do? And I'm not saying that we should become Superman.
Right.
Or Batman. I don't like Spider-Man. I don't think a man should dress as a spider, but that's just my thing. But how can we help? Right? What can be encouraging for somebody
Yeah.
How can we encourage somebody?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the word to use there, encourage. Yeah, I mean, we're not the saviors of the world. Thank goodness, we do have a Savior who has saved us and has brought us to salvation and has shown us something of what a full life can be. I think it's for men who've had a taste of that to talk about that to the men who are part of our lives. And
so we should become some sort of ambassadors of the groups that we're part of, right?
Right. So, and it's just a matter of talking. And just if you begin to talk about your experiences in the group, just I've been doing this with these guys. These are the kinds of things we're talking about. That kind of thing. That's it. It becomes a very winning thing. But most men, when they hear about what's the positive experiences that other men are having, they want something of that. So your word ambassador is a good word, as good as any. Some might say evangelist. Somebody say
absolutely.
all those kinds of things. But that's part of the Christian walk. One of the things I learned about being a Christian along the way is it is, of all the possible ways you could go, if you want to have the fullest life, be a Christian person and work at it in fear and trembling, and you will have the best possible marriage that you could have. And not that marriage is difficult. If we were talking about marriage, my wife and I have had issues along the way. Been a great marriage, but I think even in great marriages, you struggle through certain things. Yeah. And same with your kids, same with your job, all that kind of thing. But to have, and I'm not saying that if you're a Christian, you're not going to have problems. You may lose your job, you get sick, all that kind of thing. But this gives you, I think, the best opportunity to maximize the fullness of your life. And whatever comes to you, whether it's an early death, or loss of job, disappointments, that's part of it. But we're promised that Christ will be with us through that, and that our experience of it will be different. And I think that's something that we should hold on to.
Michael, in closing, what are some of the steps that somebody can take who is interested in joining a men's group or a discipleship group, a general idea of that? Because many men will say, well, I don't know where to start. I
would say the place to start is in their own church, or if they're not in a church, to visit a church. I mean, there are men's ministries and church. They do, and they approach it various different ways. Yeah. There's wonderful programs out there that for men, and that's the place I think they should start. And if they feel so called, if they feel that their church is not doing enough to volunteer to help. Pastors are always looking for people who are willing to help. That's right. As opposed to being told what to do. Right. Somebody, if you go to your pastor and say, "I will help you do this. I will get some guys together." Take some initiative. That's always a good thing. But it's a matter. You have to take the first step, and so I would encourage that.
Usually people come in and with the need, but they don't come in with the solution or a possible solution, right? Sure, everybody comes in with a need. Right. I have this need. I see this problem. But bring me some sort of a solution, right? Or a possible solution. Right. So I think a good word that I like to use is, how can I help? Right? There's a possible solution here. How can I help? Right. Right? Because I think many men what are looking is for somebody to activate them. I like that word. You gotta activate people. A lot of men are waiting to be activated. Now, let me explain. There's two kinds. I will say there's two kinds of men in this situation. Those who are waiting to be activated that will never say, "Let me do this. Let me run with this." Those men are actually waiting for you to tell them, "Do this, run with this." They're ready to do it, but they will never go to you and say, "Let me do it." They're waiting for somebody to activate them, right? They're waiting for that. Now, there are the other ones that are waiting to be activated, but they have the boldness to go to someone else or to go to a key player and say, let me do this. I'm ready for this. I have the time for this. I have the heart for this. Let me do this.
Right.
And let's see what happens.
Yeah, because some men are problem solvers. Got a problem?
Right.
Here's the solution.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Some men are passive. Well, you figured it out. And if I like your solution, I'll do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. That's true. Well, Michael, thank you so much for joining this podcast. I hope that this episode finds you well. And if you're listening, if anything at all in this episode was encouraging to you, would you mind sharing this episode with someone else? Michael, any last thing that you will say to a man that is just waiting to get involved in a men's group? What is one thing that you will encourage him with at this point in life?
I would say that's just to be an active participant. The thing you don't want to be is to be just a passive spectator of your own life, but take charge of your life and see where you need to challenge yourself. And in one of the areas that I think would be most helpful is if you associate yourself with other men who are willing to walk through with you through your life in as you develop into a mature Christian.
Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And if this content is helpful to you, would you consider rating this episode and subscribe to the podcast? It will mean the world to me. For more information, you can follow me on Twitter by going to twitter.com/Rafael Sifontes. Until next time, God bless you.